Well, hello, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Our next trolley stop is here. Our next trolley stop is now. Welcome back to another all-new episode of PR from the Heart's Children's Book Spotlight Series. To be precise, we have reached episode number 209. That is the 209th trolley stop here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series here at PR from the Heart. My name is John Masiulionis, the manager of PR from the Heart and the host of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, joined as always by my faithful furry friend and companion, little Forrest, who always reminds us at the top of each episode, John, I am your co-host in this faithful journey called life, as well as here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series. We hope that all of you are fully immersed in the month of your May, however you are spending your quality time with your friends, with your family, with your loved ones. We are just a few weeks away from the start of one of our favorite times of the year, the summer reading season here at PR from the Heart. For all of those who are new here to our program, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for us here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series and PR from the Heart is to subscribe to our official YouTube channel and join the PR from the Heart family on YouTube. More than 13,000 members of the PR from the Heart family on YouTube alone. And today, we're going to be talking about nature. And we're going to be going a little bit deeper than that because, of course, as the summer is upon us, the weather is getting warmer. Children, parents, families, those who love spending time outdoors are able to spend more time outdoors. But, one of the things that we really learned about during the pandemic, I guess one of the silver linings is that we did take a lot for granted. And in many respects, for a long period of time, we have been taking our environment, our planet, Mother Nature for granted. So the question is, what can we do about it? I think that one of the other things that kind of came through from the pandemic is that we can just say that we're going to do something and talk a big game, or we can actually do our part to be able to do something about it. And one of the most important ways that we can do our part to be able to do this is to prep and prepare the next generation. And do our part to not only spend more time with our children outdoors and remind them of all of the joy and the bliss and the amazingness that happens when we're outdoors, but how we can do our part to protect our planet, to protect Mother Nature, and to protect the outdoors when we spend quality time there. We encourage all of you, listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course our fellow shining stars, to note and to remember that as always here at the Children's Book Spotlight Series here today, at least specifically, we have two brand new children's books that are helping us to put this into its proper perspective. So again, we encourage all of you to read and enjoy and to purchase your copies of A Place for Rain, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Norton Young Readers. We had the opportunity, of course, to work with their wonderful team as part of the worldwide launch of Catherine Rory's Making More How Life Begins, in addition to checking out and purchasing your copies of Leafy Landmarks, Travels with Trees. One of the many ways that you can pledge your support for our featured guest here this week on the Children's Book Spotlight Series is to head on over to the official website of Michelle Schaub. She keeps it simple. She keeps it real. Her first name, her last name.com. We always like to say the first name and the last name.com. In addition, you can head on over to Amazon.com. Again, one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Michelle and for the teams at Norton Young Readers, as well as Sleeping Bear Press. We always want to acknowledge children's book publishing companies that sound super cute and adorable. Like, who wouldn't want to have their book published by Sleeping Bear Press? One of the many ways you can pledge your support for Michelle, for Norton Young Readers, for the team at Sleeping Bear Press, is to leave 5-star reviews for both A Place for Rain and Leafy Landmarks, Travel with Trees. For all educators who are interested in facilitating your own in-person or virtual author school visit with Michelle for the upcoming 2024-2025 school year, you can also head on over to Michelle's website as well. And of course, for all of you who are supporters of the pillars of our community, local libraries and children's and independent bookstores, you can purchase your copies of A Place for Rain and Leafy Landmarks there. If they do not stock their copies of either one or both books, make that kind, polite recommendation. The little tip of the cap. Let them know that you actually heard about both books here on the Children's Book Spotlight Series. The trolley travels from San Diego, not very far, but we always love when we can spend quality time with one of our newest neighbors in a beautiful state that we haven't had the chance to spend some quality time in as of recently, the state of Colorado. So the trolley travels from San Diego to Fort Collins, Colorado. Joining us here is our featured guest on episode number 209 of the Children's Book Spotlight Series, award-winning children's author, Michelle Schaub. Michelle, thank you for spending some quality time with us here today. You definitely have been busy coming off the heels of National Poetry Month and the release of these two wonderful children's books. Thank you for spending some time with us here in our neighborhood today. We really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you, John, for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
It's always great when there's a lot to talk about. We were just talking in the PR from the Heart Green Room, the fact how there's two different kinds of busies. There's busy doing what it is that you love, and then it goes back to the expression, when you're doing what you're doing, it doesn't really feel like work. And then there's busy just for the sake of being busy, and you're doing the first instead of the latter, which is super cool. We're always big on origin stories here at the Children's Book Spotlight series, and we're always curious to learn where it began for an author. For some authors, it seems it's a matter of, one of the earliest memories they have. I still remember one of my favorite movies that came out in the late 90s, Mr. Deeds. There was the character Winona Ryder, and she said she had this little Holly Hobby notebook, right? And so for some authors, it's a matter of they have their own version of the little Holly Hobby notebook, and they remember how, they want to be an author at a very young age. For some authors, it's an experience or a series of experiences that happens, whether it be the birth of their child, the loss of a loved one. You've obviously been very busy, not only recently, but over the course of the past 5 or 6 years. Your work is really getting out there in the world of children's literature, which is super cool. Could you share with us, because there's obviously people who are learning about your work for the first time, they're saying, Leafy Landmarks, that sounds interesting, and a place for rain. I'm curious about learning more about this book. Could you share with us, before we crack the cover and dive into the pages of both stories, could you share with us a little bit more about your origin story and really where it began for you, when you knew that a large part of your mission and your purpose was meant to be to better the lives of children, and to do that through children's books?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say for me, it started in college. 2 classes in particular that came together for me. One was a class on writing. I just took a creative writing class because I've always loved writing. I've always had a journal and written poems in the journal. And I thought, maybe I want to do this more seriously. So I took this writing class, and over the course of the semester, we wrote 3 different stories. And my stories were very different from the other stories in the class. There were stories about car crashes and just very kind of adult tragic topics. And my stories always had child protagonists. And I felt like a disconnect, maybe I'm not meant to be a writer. And then I was walking around the lake on the campus of my university with a friend. And my friend said, well, you write about kids. Maybe you should write for kids. Did you ever think about writing a children's book? And the light bulb went off. That's my audience. That's where I need to be. That's why my stories always have child protagonists. The other class was an environmental geology class. And in this class, we learned all about all of the things that are happening as a result of climate change, terrible things that are happening on the earth. And when I first learned about these events, there was a bit of a depression, oh, wow, there are so many things wrong with this planet, and how can we help? And then I realized, I'm one person, I can do little ripples, drop a stone in the stream and watch it ripple and see where those ripples go. And if everyone does some little bits, then that's going to make a big difference. So when I started writing more seriously for children, I really wanted to take that message that we can do simple actions. There are things we can do to help the earth, and put that out into the books that I wrote.
And I'm really glad that you trusted your intuition. You were really seeing what was coming through all of this, because it's, there's times when we have those messengers that come across our path. I like to call them earth angels here at the Children's Book Spotlight, where someone says, hey, I think you should do this, right? But we can either, follow that, or we can kind of go in a little bit of a different path. So I'm super cool that you've obviously followed the path that you're on, and get it following your path. It's also a nature reference. So you see how everything kind of lends up blending together. whenever you're doing something new for the first time, whether you're becoming a parent for the first time, you're stepping into the world of children's literature for the first time, whenever you're even just wanting to level up, you're wanting to better yourself in life and or your career, you can experience challenges, difficulties, stressors, troubles, worries, you name it. Challenges, difficulties, problems, stressors, troubles, worries. Specifically speaking, when it came to early on in your path, and then specifically through these books, which again, we'll be talking a little bit more about momentarily, what are some of the specific challenges and difficulties of note that you've experienced along your path as a children's author? And what are some of the specific things that you feel have helped you to get through to the other side of those challenges and difficulties? Because you're obviously are on the other side of those, because here we are about ready to talk about these two wonderful books.
Yes, I would say for me, the biggest challenge was finding time to write, because I was realistic from the beginning. I knew I couldn't just graduate from college with an English major and become a children's author. I also love teaching, and that's been a big part of my career and has informed my writing as a children's author. But I started as a teacher. And so teaching full time and then having a family and then finding time to write is really challenging. That time management is so challenging. And there were times when I felt like a circus performer who had the plates on top of the sticks, and I'm spinning the one plate and it's going pretty well. And then that might be my teaching. And then the family plate was wobbling, so I'd have to go and get the family plate. And so I was just always trying to balance all of these different things. And it was challenging. And the children's writing often took a back seat because I had these other obligations. And so for a while, I felt like I wasn't making progress. But I took a class through the Society of Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, and it was specifically on poetry, taught by Heidi Romer in Illinois, the ABCs of Poetry. And in that class, Heidi said this very similar experience. When I was working and I had children at home, it's very hard for time management. This is something that authors have to deal with. It's pretty ubiquitous, that finding time to write. And she said, I just did one thing a day. If it was reading a new children's book, if it was writing down an idea, that one thing a day moved me forward. And that gave me hope when I was really busy to think, no, I might not be sitting down for 2 hours a day and writing today, but I might have come up with an idea, or I might have written down a really interesting word that I want to put in a poem. And all of those are little steps forward. So that's been my mantra, just those little baby steps along the way will get you to your goal.
It's interesting that you mentioned that, because one of the things that I actually do on my end of things, I credit one of my coaches and mentors. He said, John, I want you to go to Home Depot and I want you to get a bucket. Now, not just any kind of bucket. I want you to call it a victory bucket. And I remember this was eons ago, and I'm like, all right, a victory bucket. And there is something to that, the doing one thing per day. I remember my grammar school art teacher growing up, Miss Schaubner, she would say, John, a little dabble do ya? And I had no idea what she was talking about with that, but now it's kind of like, oh yeah, now Miss Schaubner, now this conversation with Michelle, you take the one step at a time, you celebrate the victories along the way, because then you're able to look back. And as we were talking about in the PR from the Heart Green Room, it's like 2 books being released within 1 month. And again, before we talk about the books, like having this time of the year for yourself, obviously, again, you've been in the industry for a good period of time, but stepping into the launch of both of these books, and then of course, we're just coming off the heels of National Poetry Month. Specifically, what does it mean to you? You're obviously doing your part to share your message with children, with parents, with families, with educators, in classrooms. You're really connecting kids especially with science and with nature and with poetry. So I love that blend. We'll talk about that as well too. But what is it like for you right now? Have you had the chance, amidst the busyness, have you had the chance to just really sit back and say, wow, 2 books within days of one another, tied into National Poetry Month? Have you had the chance to take the time and smell the roses? And if so, how have those roses smelled?
They're smelling really good. In fact, that's ironic that you mentioned roses because I just trimmed my roses yesterday to get ready for the season. Yeah, I feel good where I am because I feel like I have a nice balance. I'm not teaching full time now, but I am still subbing and I'm volunteering with an early literacy program and writing and doing some writing coaching. And so I feel like I'm enjoying the spot where I am, where I have time to give back to the community and also feed my own creative spirit. So it's been really joyful to be in this spot.
That's awesome. And of course, we encourage all of you, if you haven't had the chance to do so as well, to head on over to Amazon.com if that is your favorite online vehicle of your choosing. Purchase your copies of Leafy Landmarks, Travel with Trees, and A Place for Rain. They are now available, respectively, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Sleeping Bear Press and Norton Young Readers. We encourage all of you, again, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, if you haven't again had the chance to do so, to leave a 5-star review. If you feel guided and called to do so, leave a 5-star review for both books. That's one of the many ways that you can pledge your support for Michelle, to let her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books. If you prefer heading into your favorite local or independent bookstore or your favorite local libraries, we like to say they're the pillars of our community. We encourage you, if they don't stock their copies of Leafy Landmarks in A Place for Rain, to make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you actually heard about Michelle's newest works here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. And of course, as well, for all educators all across the country, if you are interested in facilitating your own virtual or in-person author school visit with Michelle as part of your 2024-2025 school year. It's interesting. I was just thinking like a couple of weeks ago how I graduated from high school 25 years ago, and we were writing 90s. When you write the journal entries in the 90s, and then you say 2024, 2025. It's like, wow, yes, this is where we are as of right now. But again, Michelle, when you're doing your part to be able to consider the authors that you want to bring into your classrooms, whether it be in person or virtually, it's really important that you connect with someone who cares. And what you're seeing right now, like really, Michelle is making a great difference in the lives of children. That's one of the reasons why she's an award-winning children's author in the process. Tackling A Place for Rain. One of the things that's interesting, so I'm out here in San Diego. It's absolutely beautiful. But the past couple of years, it's interesting. Now it seems we have what people are referring to here as a rainy season. And it's like, I didn't know that I moved to Seattle in the fall of 2020. We normally didn't get a lot of rain here. Statistically speaking, I believe the first 3 months of last year, we had more rain than Seattle. When you think of cities with rain, you think Seattle, right? And then here, we actually, not all areas in San Diego, but certain areas got devastated by flooding. And when you think, again, of San Diego, you don't think of flooding. And so they're definitely, for those who don't necessarily believe in climate change, we're seeing some really funky things that are happening just recently. It's obviously not, pertaining to rain, but, just a few days on back, there were tornadoes that devastated different parts of the country, Nebraska especially. And so something's definitely happening right now. We mentioned your origin story. Before we talk a little bit more about and crack the cover and dive into the pages of A Place for Rain, could you share with us where this story first came about for you? Because it really sounds that this isn't just like, okay, I'm going to write a book about something topical. It really sounds like this is something that is very deep and meaningful for you.
Yeah, absolutely. One of my personal passions is using water and land sustainably. And so I learned about rain gardens probably about 15 years ago. And I actually planted a rain garden when I lived in Illinois because I was having some runoff from our roof just flood onto our driveway. And in the process of creating the rain garden, and for those who don't know, a rain garden is a type of green infrastructure. It's a landscaped area designed to capture runoff and reduce pollution and use the earth and use native plants as natural filtration for the rain so that it doesn't end up in our rivers and streams and lakes after it's become dirty with the runoff. So I had learned about this process. I planted my own rain garden. I like to say that instead of puddles and mud, I ended up with a rainbow of flowers. And so I saw it firsthand how it helped in my situation. And so I thought this would be a really interesting idea for a children's story. And I wrote the children's story probably about 10 years ago. It was a narrative. It was really long. It wasn't very good. I knew it wasn't very good. I didn't know how to fix it, so I put it in a drawer, which is a great strategy for writers. When your story isn't working, put it away. Come back to it later, because your brain is going to be still working on it, even though you don't realize. And I had worked on other things, had some success, published my first poetry collection, which is Fresh Picked Poetry, A Day at the Farmer's Market, all about a day at the market, published by Charles Bridge and illustrated by Amy Huntington. Had some success with some other things and really started finding my voice more as a poet and in lyrical writing. And when I moved to Colorado, I was at my local library walking around and noticed they had a rain garden. I was walking around the town. One of the civic buildings had a rain garden. And I said, wow, this concept is starting to catch on. Let me go pull out that old narrative. And when I pulled it out, I re-envisioned it as a lyrical poem because I had found that voice, and it was much more the style that story needed.
And this is something, again, like having the chance to read the story. I love the fact how you're a problem solver. And you're encouraging kids to literally make, there's the infamous expression, you make lemonade from lemons, right? And it's a matter of like, there's many adults. One of the things that I feel that not a lot of adults, but a decent number of adults, and you see this a lot of times when you turn on the news, depending upon what news you're watching, a lot of people are talking about things. But when it comes to putting things into action, right? And like, what can we do to solve the problem? You can keep talking about the problem, but you're not going to get anywhere. You have to be able to create solutions. And one of the things as well, too, that really I feel helps to make this book stand out is your use of, and it's a very beautiful word, so I have to pronounce it, onomatopoeia. Yeah. And being able, like, plink, plop, or plink, plip, plop, we watch the raindrops drop. Kids really love like those kinds of things. So why, again, if maybe let's say that you lined up some parents and you just kind of describe your children's book a little bit, I'm sure that there might be some parents that might say, wow, that's super cool. And there might be some parents that might say, well, my kids might not really like that. Like, here we are, we're talking about making rain gardens, and I don't know. So like, why was it important for you to be able to weave in that onomatopoeia and really make the story even that much more impactful? Because as you know from your time with kids, when stories are more interactive and engaging, they really like the story. Plus, it's a story they can go back to more than once, which is always a good feeling.
Yeah. Well, as you said, the onomatopoeia is at the heart of this story, and picture books are meant to be read aloud. And so when you can weave in the different devices that emphasize sound, alliteration, assonance, onomatopoeia, when you can play with words so that they have this beautiful musicality to them when you read them out loud, that is going to engage readers and want children to read the book over and over again because it's just fun to listen to. I also was very purposeful. Rain and water and the sounds of water and the way water moves is at the heart of the story. So I wanted rain and water to be at the heart of the story with their sounds. And so that's why there are so many sounds in this book. And I've been doing quite a few school visits the past few weeks, and I have been so surprised that children as young as first grade and second grade, they know what onomatopoeia is. They are studying literary devices and non-literal language in school. They know these sounds and they connect. When I ask them, what are these words? Plink, plink, plop. Half the kids will raise their hands and say, that's onomatopoeia. And then they listen for those sounds as they're listening to the book, and their eyes just get big as they're hearing all these different sounds that echo rain and water. So it's really fun to watch how this book plays well when it's read out loud.
No doubt. It's definitely a story that when you're gathering kids together, or even if it's just one-on-one, of course, we're coming off the heels of Mother's Day. Father's Day is just around the corner. So this is like a perfect story for for moms to read to their little ones, fathers to read to their little ones. One of the things that I really love about the summer reading season is this is the time where the kids go to visit grandma and grandpa. And I can just envision again that, them all saying plink, plip, plop. We watch the raindrops drop. It's a cool thing to be able to read together. One of our favorite times here in a children's book spotlight series episode is when we crack the cover and we dive into the pages of the new children's book, or this particular instance, books that we're sharing on the program. We always say that we don't like to give away the whole kit and caboodle of the children's book spotlight series. That's for whatever reason a term that it sounds like an old vaudevillian term, like the old kit. We don't want to give away the kit and caboodle. That means, by the way, we don't want to give away the whole darn thing here on the program. So could you share with us a little bit about this story, A Place for Rain, what children will learn, enjoy, most importantly, what they'll take away when they read this particular story of yours?
Yeah, I think they'll take away that water and rain are important. They're nurturing, but they can cause problems. But we can do simple things to help with those problems. In the story, a classroom builds a rain garden. And they start by watching plink, plip, plop. We watch the raindrops drop. And all of a sudden, this drizzle turns into a downpour and it starts flooding. And where does all this water go? It flows into our waterways. And from there, that's the problem. They come up with the solution of the rain garden, and then there's steps to building the rain garden. And even if now rain gardens cannot be put in every place. And in the back matter, I talk about where infiltration tests that you can do and how you can decide if your soil is right for a rain garden. There are different laws in different states for how rain gardens can be put in. So there are different parameters, but even if the readers come away with the idea that, a rain barrel is something we can put on our house to collect water, to save water. That's one part that can be integrated into a rain garden. Or if they come away with the idea that native flowers, because they have long roots, they don't require a lot of water, so they are a more sustainable thing to have in a garden, but they also help direct water into the soil and help with preventing erosion. So planting native plants, there are lots of stuff. There are lots of parts to this story, whether you're building an entire rain garden or you're just taking away some of the little things you can do. There's so much in here that are models for positive impacts that readers and their families can take.
And just as this particular story is engaging, so is Leafy Landmarks. And it's a perfect transition because, again, things are what we make of them. And if you go to your little one and say, there's a tree, like it can just be like this random passerby kind of experience. But when you're able to make trees that much, instead of a tree, I love how you refer to it as an arboreal leafy friend, right? And so like, again, if I'm a little one and by the way, for us as adults, remember, we have that inner child that is still within us. I really love this story on different levels because, having the opportunity to learn about like the survivor tree that's out in New York City, coming off the heels from 9/11. There's also the different trees that have different backdrops and histories. And so Leafy Landmarks really encapsulates all of this as well. Before talking about the story, cracking the cover and diving into the pages, could you share with us briefly where this particular story began as well, too? Because this is a way to be able to weave in different facets, not even just talking about trees, but specific trees. You're talking about history. You're talking about you're weaving in poetry. There's travel that's involved. So it's kind of like you're almost like you're balancing the 13 plates within this book as well, too.
Yes. Yeah. This book has so many layers, purposefully has layers to reach a wide variety of readers. But as you said, there's history, there's geography, there's nature, there's science, there's poetry. It all comes together. And the idea for this book, actually, it's a road trip. A family takes a road trip all around the country to visit famous and historic trees. And I like to say that this book has had quite a road trip because it has been almost 18 years from when I first got the idea to it becoming a book illustrated by Anne Lambelet and published by Sleeping Bear. But the very first spark of the idea started when I was living in Illinois. I used to go to the Morton Arboretum with my children, and we would picnic. And one of our favorite picnic spots was under this beautiful old oak tree. And one day I noticed there was a new plaque in front of the oak tree. And the plaque said that this tree had been designated as the Illinois Millennial Landmark Tree because it had been a traditional spot where the Potawatomi people would camp. And so I thought, that is amazing. I am sitting here and camping, having a picnic with my children in a spot that the indigenous people had camped at for years and years. This was their place. And all of the history that that tree has seen from then until now is an amazing concept. So that really got me interested in the idea that trees are witnesses to our past, to our memories. There's so much that is valuable and important about trees beyond their environmental impact, which is also very important. So I thought this would be a great idea for a children's book, to find those tree stories that are particularly intriguing for children and make these trees come to life in all of those different ways.
And there were so many different trees to choose from. Was there a specific process of sorts? Were there specific ones where it's like, I need to include this? And again, because bear in mind, when you have a children's book, traditionally it's anywhere as a children's picture book, that is, it's between like 32 to 38 pages, sometimes a little bit more, but like, this is where having an editor and a team come in where it's like, okay, this one needs to go out. Could you share with us a little bit about the process of like really why it was important for you to include specific ones in the story?
Yes. So we ended up, because there is a limit to how many trees you can have, and each tree takes up its own spread in the book, because there's the poem and then there's nonfiction information about the tree. So for example, we have a double page spread. This is the lofty Titans, which are the coast redwoods in California. And because the trees and the poems, in order to really showcase them, take up that spread, we were limited to 14 trees. And so one consideration was I wanted different stories. I didn't want all stories about trees that had witnessed battles in the Civil War, or all trees that had been part of, there are like moon trees, for example, are trees that have gone up to the moon as seeds in astronauts' packs and then came back and were planted. I didn't want it to be only moon trees. I wanted there to be a variety of stories, a variety of types of trees. Every tree is a different species, and it's a road trip. So that I wanted the trees to represent the different parts of the United States. I didn't want to have all trees that were on the East Coast or all trees that were on the West Coast. So putting all those parameters together gave me a set of trees that qualified for the book. And it's only a few. As you said, there were so many historic trees, superlative trees. I've had people reach out and say, oh, you should have included this tree, or this is my favorite tree. And I can't include them all in the book, but that is the magic of this book, is I wanted to spark readers' interest in historic trees and then find the trees in their neighborhoods, in their towns, in their cities that have significance, and then celebrate those trees too.
And I'm glad you mentioned that. The story, it sounds like and it feels like that it really serves as a jump off point for further engagement and further discussion, where it's a matter of like, okay, these are the trees that we're talking about, but it can inspire kids to be able to, what's the history of that tree? And it just might be like the tree in their backyard, or they may be at like, they may be someplace like Joshua Tree, or they might be at, Central Park, right? Depending upon where they're at, and it just creates further engagement, which again is always a good feeling, in the words of our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers. We're beginning to wind down our time with our featured guest, your award-winning children's author, Schaub. We're fully in the midst of her brand new children's books, Leafy Landmarks, Travel with Trees, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Sleeping Bear Press, as well as A Place for Rain, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Norton Young Readers. We encourage all of you, again, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Amazon.com if that's your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. Leave 5-star reviews after purchasing, reading, and enjoying A Place for Rain and Leafy Landmarks, if you feel called and guided to do so, one of the many ways you can pledge your support for Michelle is leaving 5-star reviews for both A Place for Rain and for Leafy Landmarks. Of course, for all educators across the country and around the world, for that matter, if you are interested in facilitating your own in-person or virtual author school visit with Michelle for the 2024-2025 school year, you can connect with her via her official website, which we've included in the description below, by the way. And of course, if you are interested in heading over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, again, they are the pillars of our community, as we like to say. Be on the lookout for copies of Leafy Landmarks, Travel with Trees, and A Place for Rain. If they do not stock their copies, again, make that kind recommendation. We don't encourage you, yelling at the good folks at the libraries and the children's and independent bookstores. They're just doing their jobs in the process. But again, make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about both of these empowering reads here on the Children's Book Spotlight, and they should stock them in their libraries and or independent and or children's bookstores. We always love to be able to provide some useful tips, tools, and strategies as well, too, for parents, for educators, for grandparents, for caregivers, those who really are doing their part to make the life of a child, to make the lives of children that much more, not even just better, but that much more meaningful as well, too. And again, when it comes to, we've been seeing what's been happening, as we discussed, with climate change. We've been seeing what's been happening with our planet. And this is one of the great things about being here in San Diego. Very eco-conscious area, especially with regards to things even like, the not use of the plastic bags, that kind of thing, right? So there are areas, there are people that are making a difference, and they're doing things to definitely make things that much better. But it's interesting because one of the things that you're really helping us to remember through the course of both of these books is that when we're taking care of our planet, we're doing our part to take care of each other. There's a symbiotic, almost a mirror-like effect between the two. So linking both of those threads together, what are some specific ways in which parents and caregivers and custodians and educators can do their part to be able to inspire children to take better care of the planet and to take care of each other in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. I like to say that you're not going to want to care and protect for something you don't know. So get out and appreciate. If you're out in nature, if you're experiencing nature, you're going to love nature and you're going to want to protect nature. So even as simply as pointing out trees and talking about the importance of trees and designating trees in your yard as important trees. What have these trees seen in your own life? Wow, they saw when you took your first steps. So remember when we read this book under the tree? Making those connections with nature is a great way also to connect as a family. And with A Place for Rain, which is based on putting in a garden, getting out and digging in the earth and putting in those plants. If you're putting in native plants, pollinator-friendly plants, and talking about how these plants help the earth, that process of actually interacting with nature is going to make that heart connection with young children, and then they're going to want to protect what they love.
That's very true. And it's important that again, we do our part amidst the busyness, right? Us as adults, we have the to-do list, the laundry list of things. But even if it's to take that one thing per day, right? To let our little one know that one simple suggestion, or, hey, maybe you should, don't litter, right? It can just be a simple thing. But again, the more that we're doing our part to make this more of a staple in our lives, our kids see what it is that we do. Their minds and their hearts are like sponges. And so it's important that we're doing our part to be able to walk our talk, as the expression goes as well, too. You're very much keeping busy in different aspects that are tied to the world of children's literature as well, too. Your use of poetry, and poetry really is an art in many respects. And it's interesting because I've had the good fortune of working with children's authors who are poets and working with poets who are more inspirational or spiritual authors in the 10 years that I've been doing PR publicity work. And it really is a gift. And it's something where it's almost like a muscle. The more that you flex it, the more that you work it, the stronger that it becomes. And there's people that understand poetry, and then there's people that it's just they see it, but they don't necessarily get it. They may even kind of scoff at it. Oh, it's poetry, and you just kind of blow on to the next thing. Could you talk about more about your work at Poetry Boost and like how it seems like, again, the work that you do, we're very intentional about what we do here at the Children's Book Spotlight series. As I mentioned, the PR from the Heart Green Room, it really feels like in all facets of your work, including Poetry Boost, that you're very intentional about that. Could you share with us a little bit more about Poetry Boost, if you could?
Absolutely. Yes. Poetry Boost is my educational site, where I share lessons and tips and mentor texts and templates for making poetry fun and accessible in the classroom. As a language arts teacher myself, I brought poetry in the classroom as much as I could. I used to have Poetry Friday challenges with the students where we would just enjoy poetry and write poetry. It wasn't graded, there were no right answers, but it was just finding that joy in poetry, because poetry, there's so much that poetry can do to boost literacy. It's short, so it can be less intimidating for reluctant readers. You can build vocabulary with it. There's a connection to emotions and social emotional learning that can happen through poetry. And so I just feel like it's a very valuable resource. And so, using my own experience as a teacher, I share those lessons, those tips, those different ways that I sparked joy for poetry in my own classroom on this website, so that teachers can then have easy, free, fun resources to bring poetry into the classroom also.
I also love, on the fact of talking about your connection with poetry, the fact how you're wanting to better the lives of the next generation of children's authors. And, we've, one of our dear friends and fellow neighbors, and we've had the opportunity to work with them for 2 national book tours. John Parra, award-winning artist, illustrator, children's book author. One of the things I love about John, and almost since day one that I've known him, he is no problem taking the time out of his day to be able to, whether it be mentor, just give that kind word, even just give that particular person the attention that their work is needing in that particular moment or over a span of time. And you have something really special called Rhyme Doctors, which I think is super cool in and of itself. I don't necessarily want to spoil it just yet, but could you share this a little bit more about your work at Rhyme Doctors and really how important it is for you based on the success that you have? You could be on this lofty perch at the top of the hill. I envision, like, for example, like, being in Southern California, you see the people that are on the rich houses on the top of the hill, and they can look down and say, I'm not going to help you. You're down here and I'm up here. But you're doing your part to help everyone remember that. And I know this sounds cliche, especially coming, from the pandemic, that we're all in this together, but you're really doing your part to remind everyone that we're all on the same page. And in order for, children's lives to become better and more meaningful, we need more of these books that are out there. So could you share this a little bit briefly about your work at Rhyme Doctors as well?
Absolutely. Rhyme Doctors is a critique and editorial and mentor program that I am part of, along with 2 fellow author poets, Patricia Tote and Eileen Meyer. And we started the Rhyme Doctors because we have particular skills. We can rhyme well, we understand poetry, we integrate it into our work. And we also learned that from mentors. We learned how to do this. You're not born being a wonderful poet. You can learn these skills. You can learn how to rhyme. You can learn how to have strong meter in a story. And so we knew that there are lots of writers that offer editorial services, offer mentoring, but we wanted this niche of, let's help people who really would like to learn how to rhyme, because when it's done well, it can be magical. When it's done poorly, editors are going to look at your manuscript, no matter how wonderful the story is, and say, no, thank you. So we wanted to be able to use our skills and be able to teach others how to take their manuscripts and make them shine, make them sing as far as rhyme and poetry and meter go, so that they have that much more of a chance of success in the world of publishing.
And it's interesting because and this kind of blends in really well to the perfect ways that we always close out our children's book spotlight series episodes. Our favorite neighbor, Mr. Rogers, he really reminded us that we're all a part of a neighborhood, right? So it's interesting how like the world of children's literature is almost like this supportive neighborhood. And I actually just had the opportunity to spend some quality time at the Fred Rogers Institute doing research for my forthcoming debut children's book, which is coming out next year in 2025. And most notably, he did this when he received his Lifetime Achievement Award at the Daytime Emmy shortly before he passed from stomach cancer. But he also did this in different ways through his time on the neighborhood and in different talks, whether it be commencement speeches or talks at the American Library Association. He encouraged he wanted us to remember those who helped love us into being. And that was his way of saying, remember those individuals who took the time to help us remember how special that we are in the process, right? And to be able to know that we can do something about a problem, that we are problem solvers as well, too. Who are some of the specific people that you would like to publicly recognize here on episode number 209 of the Children's Book Spotlight series that helped love you? Michelle Chauvin.
Yes, I would say absolutely my family, my parents, Mike and Val, and my husband, Matthew, and my children, Macy and Ethan and Benjamin. I could not have done anything as an author, as a writer, without their love and support and encouragement along the way. But also, as I talked, there are mentors along the way that really helped me. As an educator, I have mentors like Liz Dodge. When I was at the University of New Hampshire getting my master's degree, she was my mentor teacher, and she just taught me about how important it is to be student-centered. We are teaching for the students, so our teaching and our lessons need to be engaging and student-centered. And then I already mentioned Heidi Romer. I took the ABCs of poetry class with her, and that's where I first really honed my voice as a poet. And then David Harrison, who is another published children's author, has been a big mentor to me with my first poetry collection. He's a big reason why it got into the shape that it did, that it was able to be published. And he is a wonderful advocate for poets. He has a series now that he's doing called Poetry from Daily Life, where there are weekly stories. You can find it online. I think it is out of Springfield, Missouri's newspaper is publishing them now, but he's hoping for it to have a larger reach. Poets all around the country have little insights they give about poetry. So he's a wonderful advocate for poetry. So many more, but I'm going to stop there for now. And know the others I'm thanking you in my heart.
And I'm glad that you share those individuals. And I believe I'll paraphrase Fred's words that no matter where those individuals are, no matter if they are near or far, if they are still with us walking this earthly plane or they're watching down from heaven, they know, they're smiling, looking down on you, knowing the indelible impact that you're making on the lives of many, especially for the children at this particular point in time. We're also huge Disney buffs at the Children's Book Spotlight series, and we're always reminded each and every day that we have the ability to bring to form and shape our dreams, our desires, our goals, our ambitions. We can fulfill our wishes. Our wishes can be fulfilled. I know it sounds strange at times, right? Especially if you're kind of moving through something, but we can fulfill our wishes. And we have the ability to bring to form and shape, to help to bring to form and shape the dreams, the desires, the goals, the ambitions of those who are on our path, whether it be our family, our friends, our loved ones, those that we're called and blessed to be of service to. We can help them fulfill their wishes. So we go on the Wayback Machine briefly. We go back to the year 1992. It was a great year. We remember the late Robin Williams. We remember the Disney animated beloved classic Aladdin. And of course, we always have our trusted Genie Lamper. Wherever we go, we have a little segment that we like to call Three Wishes here on the Children's Book Spotlight series. You, for some time now, have been giving freely from your heart to children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books across the country and around the world. So this is your opportunity to receive, Michelle. As I mentioned at the beginning of our time together, I always let authors know that this is more than just a children's book spotlight series interview, because we get to this particular part of the program and then authors are like, wait a minute, what's this coming from? Like, John has a genie lamp and I'm getting 3 wishes. How super cool is that? So I think the only automatic disqualifiers, you can't make someone fall in love with you. You can't ask for more wishes. Anything else is fair game. So what would your 3 wishes be?
Oh my goodness. That is, wow. That is a hard one. I think honestly, one of my wishes would be that, I guess it's a 2-part wish, but hopefully this isn't cheating, that both of my books that came out this year, that I talked about those little ripples, you drop a stone in the stream or the pond and those ripples ripple out. I hope that the books inspire readers to take a little step, to do something. And if everyone who reads this book is inspired to do something to help nature, I feel like, wow, I am making a difference in the world. So that would be one wish. Oh my gosh. I feel like that's a big one. I feel like if I could accomplish that, I'd be happy. So I don't know. Can I end with just that one big wish?
You can, because it's. I think that you may be the first person in the 6-year history of the children's book spotlight series who have put 2 wishes in the future, kind of like, in the little bank for safekeeping. We always like to say that as long as one's wishes come from one's heart, they have a greater chance of coming true. So just make that mental note that you have 2 future wishes that you can go back to when you reflect back on your experience here at the Children's Book Spotlight series. Again, and one of the fastest growing recommendations, by the way, in the world of children's literature, we always remember growing up many years ago, the beloved, now late cinematic duo who always reviewed movies. Remember Siskel and Ebert? When they loved a movie, they gave it 2 thumbs up. Well, one of the fastest growing endorsements for children's authors in the world of children's literature is when this little guy who's sitting down right here, little Forrest, gives 2 paws up. So little Forrest is proudly giving 2 paws up for Place for Rain and 2 paws up for Leafy Landmarks. So I think that's a total of 4 paws. And that's actually good because little Forrest does have 4 paws. So it'd be a little weird if it was like 6 paws or 8 paws, but 2 paws up for Leafy Landmarks and A Place for Rain. Again, we encourage all of you, our listeners and viewers, our friends and neighbors, and of course, our fellow shining stars, to head on over to Michelle's official website, michelleschaub.com. We've included that in the description below, again, for all educators who want to facilitate your own author school visit with your students for the upcoming 2024-2025 school year with Michelle. You can head on over to her official website and take the time to connect with her directly as well. If you wish to purchase your copies of A Place for Rain, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Norton Young Readers, and Leafy Landmarks, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Sleeping Bear Press, you can do that through Amazon.com if that is your preferred online vehicle of your choosing. One of the many ways, again, that you can pledge your support for Michelle is to leave 5-star reviews for Place for Rain for Leafy Landmarks. That lets her know that she's doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books as well, too. You can, of course, head on over to your favorite local library, your favorite children's or independent bookstore, and you can, of course, check out your copies of Leafy Landmarks and A Place for Rain. Remember, they do not stock their copies of one or both books. Be sure to make that kind recommendation. Let them know that you heard about Michelle's award-winning work here on episode number 209 of the Children's Book Spotlight series as well, too. When we hear the trolley, that means that it is time to go. Raise your hand if you have had fun on episode number 209 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We see hands from Michelle, hands from myself, paws up from little Forrest, hands from the little ones on screen. As we like to say, that means mission accomplished, job well done. As you see our new backdrop sign here, this sounds like very cliche, but the Children's Book Spotlight series and PR from the Heart is where the magic happens. There are many more magical trolley stops to come. Perfect segue. Many more magical trolley stops to come on forthcoming editions of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We spent some quality time here in our neighborhood recently with New York Times bestselling children's author, the co-creator of the beloved Ordinary People Change the World series, Brad Meltzer, ESPN Sports Center anchor Elle Duncan, and so many more of the top award-winning and best-selling children's authors in the world of children's literature, and those shining stars in the kidlit community who are on the rise in the world of children's literature. So if you are a children's author, if you are a middle grade author and would love to share your inspiring story, just like Michelle did in a forthcoming edition of the Children's Book Spotlight series, and of course talk about the release of your brand new children's book, you can head on over to our official website, prfromtheheart.com. You can also head on over to our social media platforms that you now see on screen and connect with us there. Instagram, Facebook, and X, all at PR from the Heart. Of course, if you're paying close attention, you see the gentleman who is to the left of us in the process. If you remember, we've already mentioned Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood several times here on the program. So then you must remember, of course, our beloved friend and neighbor, and of course, fellow colleague here at PR from the Heart. You remember him and you love him as Mr. McFeely on the popular long-running children's television program, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We know him and we love him as David Newell. Each and every month, David joins us for all new episodes of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast, where we take the time, this little tip of the cap to his character, Mr. McFeely on Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. We deliver new heartfelt reviews of new heartfelt children's books on the program, again, from the top award-winning and best-selling children's authors in the world of published literature and self-published literature for children. In the process, we just had the opportunity to spend some quality time with our friends and neighbors at the Center for Media Innovation in downtown Pittsburgh. So again, the two newest installments of the Neighborly Reviews bookcast from the Center for Media Innovation in downtown Pittsburgh, they are now available. And of course, as we head into the summer, sooner than we know it, the back-to-school season is going to be here, and the holiday season as well, too. We have been privileged to be able to be of service to some of the top award-winning and best-selling children's authors in the world of children's literature, including John Parra, including Catherine Roy, and so many more. We're super excited because we're going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary of being of service to children's authors this summer. If you are a children's author and are looking for dedicated PR support to create a national book media tour or a book media tour in a city of your choosing, connect with us via our official website, prfromtheheart.com. Schedule your courtesy connection call and let us see how we can be of service to you. One final time, we encourage you to head on over to Michelle Schaub's official website, which we've included in the description below. We've also included Michelle's official social media platforms so you can keep the conversation going post-Children's Book Spotlight series as well, for all educators across the country and around the world who want to facilitate your own author school visit with Michelle as part of the 2024-2025 school year for your students. You know where to connect with Michelle in the process. Be sure to, again, leave 5-star reviews on Amazon for a place for rain, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Norton Young Readers, and Leafy Landmarks Travels with Trees, courtesy of our friends and neighbors at Sleeping Bear Press. And continue to support Michelle in the work that she's doing, because she truly cares about bettering the lives, opening up the minds and the hearts of children all across the country and all around the world as well, too. We hope that you've enjoyed episode number 209 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. If this episode, these messages that we have talked about have inspired you, if they've lifted your spirits, if you feel that this needs to be shared with someone in need, if you say, if anything, now I know what to do, I'm going to protect my planet, I'm going to enrich my environment, and I'm going to do my part to pass that message along to the little ones in my life, whether it be the little ones that are my children or the little ones, the little next door neighbors. We encourage you, one of the many ways you can pledge your support for us here at PR from the Heart for the Children's Book Spotlight series, and also for Michelle, is to subscribe to PR from the Heart's official YouTube channel. Join the more than 13,000 members of the PR from the Heart family that are probably subscribed to YouTube. And of course, to share this very special trolley stop that you have now enjoyed, episode number 209 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. We want to thank you for your continued support of PR from the Heart, for your continued support of the Children's Book Spotlight series, for your continued support of children's authors and illustrators such as Michelle, who again are doing wonderful and much needed work for children, parents, families, educators, and those who love great children's books, for supporting the pillars of our community, local libraries and children's and independent bookstores. And above all else, we want to thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world. One final time, we felt his spirit. He's always with us wherever we go, our favorite friend and neighbor, Mr. Rogers. And in many respects, through his own natural weight when he walked this earthly plane. Did you know that Mr. Rogers weighed 143 pounds for his entire natural adult life? In many instances, we always like to joke that in some sort of a past life, he must have been introduced to Ponce de Leon because he must have found the fountain of youth. He weighed 143 pounds, so did you know that there's 1 letter in I, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you? That was his way of reminding us of our inherent worth and of our inherent value. We're doing the same here through the Children's Book Spotlight series in our own way. So we like to share our favorite 3 numbers of 243. As Michelle and his little Forrest were kind enough to spend some quality time with us here in our neighborhood, remember, there's 2 letters in we, 4 letters in love, 3 letters in you. That is our reminder for you that you are loved, that you are whole, that you are healthy, that you are complete, that we like you, that we love you just the way that you are, that we see your inherent worth and we see your inherent value. So once again, for little Forrest, for Michelle Schaub, for myself, John Masiulionis, we hope that you have enjoyed episode number 209 of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Many more magical trolley stops to come along the way. Continue to enjoy the month of May and beyond whenever you are enjoying this particular episode of the Children's Book Spotlight series. Thank you for your continued support of us here at the program. And above all else, again, thank you for helping us to walk home the children of the world, our fellow friends, our fellow neighbors, and our fellow shining stars. Goodbye for now.